Hello, thanks for joining us on BackStories. I'm Nathaniel Hummel here with Lee Irving, owner of Gem Studios. Thanks for joining us, Lee.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I'll just jump right into the questions. I know that you're an actor. What inspired you to start this career in acting?
What inspired me? I honestly don't know. I loved movie and TVs growing up, and I think one of the things that inspired me was when I was a small child. I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Um, we had a family friend who was an actor, and he was in a movie with William Devane. It was called Red Alert, and we gathered all of our friends around the TV. There were only three television stations at that time, ABC, NBC, CBS. I forget which one it aired on, but it was a made for TV movie. And so there was a room full of people watching this. And his name was Don Wiseman. I think you can look him up on IMDb. And as soon as Don came on the screen, we all, everybody cheered, and it was wonderful. I think he had one or two lines in the whole movie, as I recall. But I thought he was the coolest guy on the planet at that point. and so that was sort of my first exposure to people acting. And then, it never even occurred to me to do this professionally until I graduated from college. I had this idea in my head that there's a certain way to do things, right? The first thing that you do is you go to high school and you get your high school diploma. And then when you graduate from high school, you go on to college. And when you're in college, you get one of two degrees. You either get a business degree or an engineering degree, because those are the only degrees that are worth anything. Everything else is just garbage, right? So I went and I got my business degree, and I went to work after college, and I was not I worked in the healthcare field, and so it should have been fulfilling, but it was not to me. And a buddy of mine invited me to be an extra in a movie called it was called Utopia. And so we went down to Waxahachie, Texas, and we were waiting around all day, and eventually um, they started looking at the extras, and they looked at me and they said, you look about the right height. Come over here. So I went over there. They said, have you ever done any acting? And I said, well, yes, as a matter of fact, I have. I was the lead in my third grade play. I played Batman Santa Claus. And I also died in my high school play as the German spy. So they immediately rushed me over to wardrobe, put me in wardrobe, did the whole hair and makeup and everything, and sent me back out to the set. And they said, your whole job is to walk this prisoner from here to the guillotine, put her on the guillotine, and then stand guard as they execute her. And I did, and I had a blast, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And the rest is sort of history from there. I started taking classes, and with a guy named Grant James, and and everybody was friendly, and I loved it, and that was it. I was hooked.
That's so cool. That's really like a nice right place at the right time type of thing.
Yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
was. Yeah, yeah.
So after that, what did you really do to kind of get your name out there? How did you like make connections, and what was like the next step forward for you?
Well, the next step forward for me was not what I would recommend for anybody else. um, assuming you've gone and gotten a business degree, if you're under 18, or if you're still in college and you're really interested in the entertainment industry, then I recommend that you get a degree in acting or filmmaking, or even communications, or something to do with the industry. If you have a business degree or an engineering degree, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. So you have to go out and build a resume. And what I did initially was I immediately found an agent who was relatively new at the time. She's well established now, but she was relatively new at the time. And I went in and I said, I want to sign with you. And she signed me. I don't know what it was. Maybe I don't know. Must have been just extraordinarily good looking. But she, for whatever reason, she signed me, and but I still had my day job, and so she would call me, and I would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I have a meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I can't make it to the audition." And then she would call me again, a couple weeks later, and she would say, "Hey, I need you in Fort Worth tomorrow," and I would say, "Oh, gosh, I'm really sorry, I can't make it. I have a training session for my staff or whatever." And I just kept throwing up roadblocks. I did 2 or 3 gigs with her, but then, I'd said so many times. She ended up saying, um, "Lee, if you say no again, I'm just going to have to drop you." And of course, she called again. I said no again, and that was the end of it. And from there, so I don't recommend getting an agent right away unless you're prepared to quit your day job and be where your agent tells you to be when they tell you to be there, because you have to do that. So what I did initially then after that was, until I was ready to quit my day job and pursue it full time, was I started building my resume. So I took every class that I possibly could. I was taking classes nonstop. I was doing plays nonstop, because I've talked to multiple casting directors who will tell you they'll only hire people who do theater, who do plays, because they Donnice Hardy, who's an Austin-based casting director, she said anybody can fake it on film, but only real actors can do theater, because there's no second takes. You're live
Wow.
every night. So I started doing theater, just as many shows as I could possibly do. I was doing, I would be rehearsing one show and performing another show, and I was constantly auditioning to build that theater resume. And then I was also, one of the things that Grant James, my first coach, taught me is, number one, always be auditioning, because that's your job. And number two is to do everything that you possibly can, and you never know who you're going to work for. So I did independent films, I did student films, I did extra work. You don't want extra work really on your resume, but it teaches you a lot about the industry and about what it's like to be on a film set. And so I got to work with some up and coming directors, a couple of whom are in Los Angeles now shooting things. And I got some leading roles in student films, which is great. And it was a blast. And I had actually one independent filmmaker wrote a part just for me, because after I had done my first film for him, he had this idea that he wanted to see the guy next door, which is me. I'm always the dad or the guy next door. He wanted to see that person as a hitman. So he wrote this part where I played Gun Tommy, and I carried a Tommy gun and I killed people. That was great fun. We shot in West Texas for about 3 weeks, I think, out in the mountains of West Texas, and so that was a blast. And yeah, I forget, what was the question. I ramble on. Oh, how did I get started?
Yeah, yeah.
That was building the resume after my first agent and I parted ways. We've now become friends again. Her name is Linda McAllister. She's brilliant. I highly recommend her. But I wasn't ready at the time. And so yeah, that's how I built my resume. And then after about, I don't know, 5 years or so of doing that, 5 or 6 years of doing that, I left my day job and I signed with another agent and just started doing commercial work and industrial work and continuing to build. Yeah.
Man, that's really awesome. It's cool how like you've taken so many different steps to become the actor that you are today. Um, which makes me wonder, for you personally, how do you define success in this industry?
Um, how do I define success? I talk to people all day long who are who want to be actors. In fact, I've had students who were like, "Okay, I'm going to Los Angeles this week," and I tell them, "Stop! Don't go to Los Angeles." But and I think those are people who define success by being a movie star. They're not going to be happy acting unless they're a movie star. And I think if you think about it like that, you're definitely going at it the wrong way, and you're going to definitely fail. So in this business, I think the definition of success is being able to be a working actor in the business, right? Because if you, I've had so many people over the years. They're like, well, how do you do, how do you do it? Do you wait tables? And yes, I did wait tables for several years. And I also did, I did whatever I had to do in order to make a living while I was pursuing my dream. At one point, just to give you an idea, like you think waiting tables is bad. I had a business. My business now is called Gideon Entertainment and Media Productions. But at one point, it was called Gideon Entertainment and Media Services, I think was what I called it. It was Gem Services. And we would basically do anything anybody would pay us to do, right? So at one point, I literally cleaned toilets to make enough money to pay my rent so that I could keep acting. So
Wow.
for those of you who think you're going to, just go get famous, it doesn't work that way. But my definition of success is no longer having to clean toilets.
That's a pretty good definition, if you ask me.
But yeah, just sticking with it until you can make your living and pay your rent, just with acting. That's how I define it. So that I get to do nothing other than act.
That's really cool. So you've obviously worked on so many projects, and I was just wondering, so as you go into a project, do you know, and if you do know, how do you figure it out if a project is going to be special right off the bat?
How do I know if a project is going to be special right off the bat? Um, I I I don't know if a project is going to be special right off the bat. I know whether or not I'm going to like a project. I know whether or not I like the script. So the first thing is, do I like the script if I'm dealing with film or television, right? And no offense to all the people who have hired me, I love you guys, but commercial projects and industrial projects are. I know those projects are going to be special based on the people that I'm working with, right? The scripts are always just, not atrocious, but they're commercial and industrial scripts. But if we're talking about film and television, you'll know from the script if you like the script, if it's compelling, if it's a good story, that kind of thing. Whether or not the project is going to be special, you know, um, largely depends on the director that you're working with. I've been lucky to work with a lot of really good directors. Most of the people that I work with are really collaborative, and so we have a lot of fun working on projects. And I've learned a lot from a lot of different directors. Um, Other things, you can tell when you walk on a set. It doesn't have to be a big budget film, or I've worked on films that have $1 million budgets or multi-million dollar budgets, and I've worked on films that have you know $40,000 budget. I think for a feature film was the lowest one that I worked on. Um, and it's really not a question of what the budget is or how much money they're spending. It's a question of the work ethic of the people involved, and the knowledge of the people involved. And for me, a project is going to be special if I'm enjoying working with the people. I don't care how much money the film makes. Um, for me, it's the experience of shooting the film that makes it special for me. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You talked about directing some there. And when I was looking over your IMDb page, it said that you both write, direct, and act. So I was curious, which is the most compelling to you personally?
For me personally, and this kind of goes back to getting my degree in business and um, you know who I am as a person. But part of the reason that I act is that I like variety. You know, I can't go sit at the computer and do the same thing day in and day out, and I just can't do that. So I love in this business, for me anyways, that I get to, even if I'm just acting, one day I'm acting in a commercial, the next day I'm doing voiceover, the day after that I'm doing an industrial, then I'm doing a film, then I'm doing a TV pilot. And so I've got a variety of things that I'm doing. And then I started doing writing and directing and editing, and I so for me, it's just the variety of experience that I get to do all those different things. Um, there's no one thing that's like easier or, you know, more compelling. If I wake up today and I'm tired, then I'll and I don't feel like going out and pounding the pavement to find an acting job, then I'll sit at the computer and start writing a script. You know, so that's the compelling part for me, is always having something that I can work on.
Man, that's so awesome to hear. It's so cool how like no matter what you're doing, you're always hustling. You're just doing like all these different things because you're not just deciding to be a one-dimensional individual. That's really cool.
And to
Out
me,
of the
that also goes back to your question about success and how you define success or how you be successful. Um, because I too many people treat this as either a get rich quick scheme or a hobby. And I think the way to be successful is to treat it like a job. Like you wouldn't go to a job and expect to work, if you wouldn't go to your corporate job for IBM or Dow DuPont or Google and expect to work 15 hours a week, 12 to 15 hours a week and make a decent living or ever make a living at it,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
just doing only the stuff that you like instead of what they tell you they need done.
Exactly. So you go to work and you work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You're essentially a business owner. You own your own business. So you're working maybe 80 hours a week, but you're doing whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's so good to hear that because it's like easy to get discouraged thinking about like I want to be an actor, but then it's like there's so few opportunities, but you don't have to just be an actor, which makes me like which of the three out of writing, directing, and acting do you think is the easiest to break into?
None of the three. Business. Go back to business school. No, um, which of the three is the easiest to break into? Uh, I I couldn't say. None of them are easy to break into.
Yeah.
All of them take like just years of hard work. Um, and people that I've talked to, you occasionally run into people who get that big break. Um, but most of the time, when people get their break in the business, it's not people who have woken up one morning and decided I'm going to quit my job at Home Depot and I'm going to go to Los Angeles and I'm going to get my big break. And a week later, they've got their big break. Harrison Ford got his big break in Star Wars after years and years and years of acting and acting training. And, he was a carpenter at the time. He was working as a carpenter for George Lucas, and they called him in to be a reader and in the audition session. And lo and behold, that was how he got his big break. But it's not like he woke up one day and became an actor. He was already an actor, right?
Mm,
So,
yeah.
so any of those three, it's not like you're going to wake up one day and suddenly go, I'm going to be a writer today. And you sit down at the computer and write a script and it gets bought for $1 million. It just doesn't happen. You sit down at this computer and you write a script and then you find some indie filmmaker who's going to produce your script and you're going to get paid points on the script, and it's going to be deferred payment, which means you're never going to get paid on that script. But then you're going to have a writing credit, right? And you're going to do 100 of those before you get your first paycheck from writing. And the same is true of directing and acting. It's just you got to put in the time and you got to do the work, and in the meantime, you scrub toilets and wait tables and do whatever it takes to pay the bills. No, it's not an easy business to get into, and I don't mean to discourage you. I really don't, but um, if you don't love it, then you're not going to be successful, I guess. So I guess in that sense, I do mean to discourage you. Like
Mm.
I don't want to encourage people. My first, I've mentioned Grant a couple of times. He was my first acting coach. He always said, if you can do anything else, do it.
Hmm.
Because um, the reason that most of us get into this business and stick with it for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years is because there's nothing else we can do. This is what we love. It's our passion. It's our life's work. And so, um, if there's something else that you can do that would make you as happy, you should probably do that. So,
So, for those of us who have been listening to this, myself included, and haven't been discouraged from joining the industry, um, even from just hearing your story and hearing Harrison Ford's story, it sounds like a lot of right place at the right time and kind of some luck played into it. So, what would be your recommendation for being at the right place at the right time and kind of making our own luck?
yeah, making your own luck is a good way to put it. I don't think there is uh, for having a career in the industry. I don't believe that there's luck involved for having a career in the industry. For being a movie star, certainly there's some luck involved. And you're not going to be a movie star in Delaware. Okay. You do have to put yourself in, Los Angeles probably. Although these days you can probably just as easily put yourself in Atlanta, um, or New York. But there's a degree of being in the right place at the right time. But if you're treating it like a business, and if you're working like you would in any other business, um, then you're going to be in those places. You're going to be there. You're going to be on film sets. You're going to be doing indie films. You're going to be in front of your agent. It's not hard to do all those things. It's not hard to do theater. It's not hard to put yourself in those places. But once you're in those places, you need to be prepared, right? So a lot of people think, and you'll read stuff online about actors in Los Angeles who they never had to take an acting class in their life. Um, and that may be true for a handful of people, but for the majority of us who have respect for acting, we study, we work hard, we learn everything we possibly can about the business and um, about acting and about how to get in touch with your emotions, and we know all the master acting teachers of the 19th and 20th centuries, um, and that's why when you're in that right place, you're prepared. You know, heaven forbid you find yourself in front of you're walking down the street one day and Steven Spielberg comes across you, and he's like, oh, hey, I like your look. I'm shooting a film here in Newark, Delaware this week, and I just happen to have a role that's for someone exactly your height, your look, your age. um, can you maybe just show me what you got? Are you an actor? And I say, yes, I'm an actor. And Spielberg says, well, let's see what you got. Is there anything you can do? And I go, uh, no, right? But if I've got 100 different monologues, they'll say, well, is it comedic or dramatic? And he says, well, it's comedic. And I go, okay. Like a slapstick comedy, or is it like a more of a dramedy? And he'll say, oh, it's more of a dramatic comedy. And okay. So I've got a monologue. Then I perform my monologue for Spielberg on the street, right? And because I've been practicing and because it's a polished monologue and I've been working really hard, I I kick butt, and Mr. Spielberg goes, "Oh, you were wonderful. Congratulations, you got the role." And there's my big break, right? And I got lucky that I ran into Steven Spielberg on the street in Newark, Delaware, and he happened to be shooting a film and had just the right part for me, right? But had all those other lucky things fallen into place, it was Steven Spielberg. He's shooting a film in Newark, Delaware. He has a part that's exactly right for me, right? But then I wasn't prepared. I didn't have anything ready. I hadn't studied. I hadn't done my homework. And he goes, "Oh, well, thanks anyways. Yeah, you're not quite right. Good luck to you though. Go get them." Right? Um, so there's that. You've got to be prepared when the luck arrives. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This just hearing about all this is like so exciting to think that even while I haven't got my big break, or anyone hasn't got their big break, you can still just be working to get to the place you need to be ready for when the opportunity comes. It's so cool to hear.
And I think the idea, the whole concept of the big break is, it's a nice idea, but what you have to ask yourself is if you like working in this business as it is today, and if you're not making a living in the business yet, then yeah, keep working it for a few years, 3, 4, 5 years. But as it is today, are you enjoying working in this business? And if the answer is yes, then continue working in the business. And if the answer is no, don't continue working in the business on the hope that someday you'll get a break. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah,
Just work it
yeah.
because you love it. But
Well, thank you so much, Lee. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
thank you. I appreciate you, talking to you. It was great.
All right. Well, this is Nathaniel Hummel, and you've been watching BackStories. Thanks for joining us.